Can I ask you about freelancers, just because it's a topic that I think is really interesting. Like, what would you say the top kind of 3 things that freelancers are kind of struggle with in 2022?
Gosh,
Is that
I
too big a
mean,
question?
um, oh gosh, I mean, I think, I think it's just so much better to be connected to people, right? So if you're isolated as a freelancer, how on earth do you know what to charge? How on
Yeah.
earth do you know um, kind of what those benchmarks are in terms of like what you should be kind of accepting from clients and things like that? So I'd just say that, all of these things that you do struggle with, and probably, the main one is always like imposter syndrome and
Mm.
mindset and things like this. I think, I know it's the same for employed people as well, but I suppose those things tend to become kind of exacerbated because you do work on your own
Yeah,
so
yeah, I
often.
get that.
So I'd say, freelancers probably struggle with being isolated a lot of the
Mm.
time. And then that kind of being isolated leads to problems with other things because you're maybe inside your own head quite a lot of the time. And I say that, even when you are talking about these things, even when you are kind of thinking, oh, maybe I should put my rates up, or, I shouldn't, I should have these exact deliverables and I shouldn't, I should set boundaries. It's still really, really hard, or I should say no if it's not my perfect client. Like that isn't realistic, and it doesn't happen overnight. But getting yourself in communities with other
Hmm.
people will help you get there, like eventually.
I
So
agree.
I think, I think setting boundaries and I found it, and it's taken me ages, but kind of charging higher rates kind of does make your clients treat you better, and all these things that you just never really think will happen. But when you finally get to that point, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Or like, you finally say no to that client that, I don't know, it's just taking up loads of your time, but it's maybe not earning you, like making you the most money, or is a bit stressful. Like there's so much power in that. So yeah, I'd say get yourself some support though, get yourself part of communities, and get people to bounce ideas off and things like that.
I completely agree. I think it's so important that when I had the same, that, I've had the same rates for 2-3 years now, and cost of living and stuff going up, and I've been scared to put my rates up because it's like, well, I know my clients aren't in the best position, so I don't want to take the piss. But then, and I get it, I struggle with it, and I completely agree that part of the reason I do the podcast is I like to talk to people. That likewise, it can be quite lonely to be stuck in a room, and for me, although I'm on Twitter, I'm not quite into it in the same way some people are, because I like to talk to people. I like to hear people's voices. And it's that balance of, the ability to communicate and hear someone's backstory and emotion in their voice and stuff that for me, you can't get in text. It's part of the reason I love to do this. But I completely agree with everything that you've said about all of the challenges that people face and trying to figure out what to do. And I find just talking to people does really help. So I really can agree with that. And hopefully it also supports the whole community element of the magazine and the stuff behind it. And you have the Dunker as well, which comes out every 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, so fortnightly newsletter. So it's kind of like some helpful links about freelancing and business and creativity, just to kind of, short and snappy. You can click on the ones that you like the look of, and have a cup of tea and a biscuit at the same time. So yeah, that's our fortnightly newsletter for freelancers.